Hello and welcome back to episode 27 of the Epoch podcast. Once again, here with me in the studio.
Hello, this is Dread, and I'm back from vacation.
Was that
Right.
vacation or just Path of Exile?
No, it was vacation. It
Where?
was
What
like
were you
an
doing?
actual vacation.
I feel like I haven't talked to you in a bit. What's been going on in your life?
Oh, I just after all the multiplayer stuff, I was like kind of like tired, so I just took a vacation because I was able to, thankfully, and it was great. I played some PoE, and I spent a lot of time with a girlfriend, stuff like that. We had an unfortunate loss in the family as well, which is partly why I took a vacation as well. But that's all fine and dandy now.
I'm
So
sorry to hear that. That's not exactly the tone that I was expecting. I didn't know that was going on, but yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it's okay.
Oh shoot.
Yeah,
So
it's really it, to be honest.
well, I hear you. I knew that you were playing a lot of Path of Exile, so I wanted to like start on that. But while we were coming up with like what we were going to talk about today, like what we're going to touch base on, we actually had some new information come out for last Epoch. It's only like 30 or 40 seconds long, but like it's still pretty good, right?
The trailer is great. I just don't like it whenever they make a trailer that has nothing in it. Like
It's
no
it's a
little
it's a
teasers.
teaser. It's got like updated
It's
visual.
the
It has Rye in it.
teasers, yeah.
We know that Rye is like an
Yeah.
important character in the lore.
Yeah, I know. It's just like for me, I'm spoiled, so I actually wanted to see something.
Tell me, have you read? And maybe I shouldn't have done this, but it's good content. Have you read the Reddit thread of the teaser that came out today? There are some opinions in there.
Oh, are you talking about like? Oh, I mean, like, see, the thing is unlike some people, I'm not like really angry about the teasers. I'm just more like, I'm just spoiled. I just want more, you know.
There are
More.
people out there who are like who share your
Well,
frustration that it doesn't have like actual content in it.
Well, no,
But these people are out of their minds. Actual out of their mind.
My only frustration was, so what happened was today I needed to go to the bank to get quarters so I could do laundry, and I had to take the bus today. And what happened was it was like 5 minutes before I walked out to the bus station. It was like right out there, right? And I get a notification in my Discord channel. It's news. It's like this weird trailer from last Epoch. I'm like, oh shoot. I'm like, I click on it. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to actually watch this. And I'm like, well, all right, well, looks like we're missing that bus. So I ended up having to walk there and back instead to get my quarters. But it was well worth it for that 40 seconds of content.
Was it? There's no content. Nothing happened. All right, so the
Well,
visuals look
okay,
great.
I'll
I
be
like
honest,
the
the
Rye
new-
bird. I like the manifest armor.
No, that's not a bird. It's a dragon. It's a dragon.
It's Rye. Rye is literally a bird.
No, that's not Rye.
You don't think that's Rye?
No, that's a mini. No, that's like a mini boss or whatever, or a rare. It's literally a dragon that has feathers. That has like a rider on top of it. Like Reimer can confirm that for me. Yeah, it's literally like a dragon with a guy on top of his back. And then he had like the manifest armor kind of like enemy as well. Those are enemies in the new campaign, Act 10. I'm going to assume that is what we're getting.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So
that is definitely not right.
first of all, canonically, dragons don't have feathers, do they? Isn't that like a wyvern or something?
I mean, we also thought that dinosaurs didn't have feathers either, so that would be a small riot and weird with a dude on top.
There was a
Also
dude on
doesn't
top.
look
I need to
very
go watch this
fiery.
thing again. I didn't realize there's a dude on top of the
See?
dragon.
Right.
All right, my bad. I thought it was though.
What, you
In any
didn't watch
case-
it like 3 times in a row? Like
No, I watched it one time and I didn't see any gameplay, so I figured that I knew what was going on.
Oh,
But no, there's some angry people on social media and Reddit that are just like, I want my teasers to tease me more.
well,
It's like, well, come on,
another
man.
thing that like I was a little like annoyed about just a little bit, and this isn't their fault. It's just like, so all right, so this requires a little bit of context. Recently, I I took up a part-time job. I am editing for a friend of ours, editing for his YouTube because, I got to have something to do while I wait for LE patches. So I've been editing for Baylor, right? Baylor Mage, a
Cool.
friend of ours. He plays some LE sometimes, but mainly he does PoE content. And he's going to be playing Diablo 4. So, yeah. And then I was also planning on playing the Torchlight Infinite like global launch in like 4 days. So I'm gonna have like the busiest next month of my life because like not only am I gonna have to do the Torchlight stuff, then I'm gonna have to swap over into LE mode for like a week or so or 2 weeks, and then I get to edit a bunch of Diablo 4 videos and stuff like that.
You get to,
Like,
oh baby.
oh yeah, and like I was like, oh, the timing is terrible, but it was just out of the blue. But you know what? I'll take it because it's better than having to wait another year and a half. So I'm good. That was a sigh of
Did you
relief,
see
by
that
the way.
last Epoch intentionally put their release of 091 one
Oh,
week
I know.
before Diablo 4?
Oh yeah, I know. And
Conscious decision. I like it.
No, yeah,
Bold.
I'm fine with it too. Yeah, no, I'm fine with it. My only problem with that specifically is depending on the scope of the patch, right? Like, so, like, is it only going to be like a week's worth of content? Like, it's just going to be the new act and a few little things, right? If it is, like, they could have just waited in theory, but at the same time, it's like up to them, obviously, right? But depending on the size of the patch, but we haven't really gotten any info on any of this yet. So
Yeah, so
I
we know nothing so far. We actually don't even
Yeah,
know if this is
but-
chapter 10, but I expect that
Yeah.
it is as well.
I mean, let's be real. It's chapter 10.
Mhm.
Like we were supposed to get chapter 10 and point 9, but they had to postpone it. So like it's obvious that it's chapter 10 with all the fire stuff, the Rye stuff, and all that. It looks very pretty.
Oh, sorry, it's not Rye. It's actually a dragon with a dude riding on his back. So
We
technically,
have to go
dude,
fight Rye, whatever.
yeah, completely different. So
Or
it
we're
sounds
probably
like the
gonna fight mini
developers.
bosses.
It sounds like the developers put this patch a week before the Diablo 4 launch because they wanted it to be like the waiting room for Diablo 4. It's
Well,
like, people are waiting for the game, they got something to do.
Yeah, it's the way to go about it. My thing is, I'm hoping. So I don't know if you've gotten tired of this as well, but some of the prettiest parts and best parts of LE right now, in terms of just the animations and the enemy designs and all of that is locked behind content that people almost never do anymore, including me. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about how like you can do monoliths very early on in progression, and you don't have to actually finish the whole campaign right now, currently, to get everything you need, other than like the plus one to all attributes. But shut up, who cares? Except if you drop a red ring. Now, like, so what I'm hoping, and this is just copium, right? If essentially I'm hoping that they put, if the factions come in this patch, that they put the access to the factions in like Act 10, so that we have an excuse to actually go through Chapter 9. So we can actually
I hear you. First of all, there's zero chance that we're getting the factions.
I just I just don't like how we have all of these extra campaign, like all of this extra stuff, and like no reason to actually do it.
Yeah, so
It would
I
be-
expect, so
yeah.
we're gonna have 12 chapters ultimately. We have 9 chapters right now. So the side quests that we currently have, I think they're going to be like stretched out more. So like they'll be less dense in the beginning of the game and like more stretched out over the remaining chapters. So to get 15 out of 15 skill points and 8 out of 8 for your idle slots, you'll have to, progress all the way through chapter 10 and a half, maybe 11, in order to get everything you need. But like still choosing to do whichever quests you want to do. So I think that's gonna be it. But
no trading item factions this patch.
yeah, exactly. So it'll be 1.0.
Instances?
No,
Are we
1.0 is going to be 1.0 is apparently the end of this calendar year, but it's also going to have all the 3 remaining
goodness.
classes, or the 3 remaining masteries, and the trade factions.
No wonder you guys put it a week before Diablo 4.
But yeah, I would like to see access to the factions or access to some of the end game mechanics locked behind you know, an NPC that you talk to in chapter 10, or like somebody that you talk to in chapter 9, so that there's another reason to go over there. Because like you've said, chapter 9 is beautiful. And like, I don't really do chapter 9. I do it like once on a character because I like getting the all dudes.
So I have played hundreds upon hundreds of characters at this point, and I've only ever done it twice. I think that's an absolute crime.
When you talk to a new player, like, I guess when I would talk to a new player, it's like, yeah, you can skip the campaign, you can do this meta thing, you can progress the same way that I progress, but you really should do chapter 9. Like you've said, it's beautiful. It's like the voice acting's good, the characters are good, there's cool stories, and like mini storylines.
An RPG, and you have to force us to have fun.
But chapter 9 is awesome. So I'm hoping that, you know, chapter 10 is the same kind of thing. So speaking of things that should have been released in 0.9 but weren't, we have one more thing, which is particularly interesting to me, hopefully to you as well. The ladder is probably coming back, which is very exciting because it might mean that we have some weekend races coming up.
Yeah. It's just the timing's all kind of poor.
For you, it sounds like terrible timing. For me, it sounds awesome.
I know. It's just like, yeah. Because I know a lot of people that would be focusing on the ladder that I know that are serious are definitely not going to be focusing on that. They're going to be focusing on Diablo 4.
That's fine.
Blizzard. And it's kind of sad, but we'll just have to wait for the next season for that.
I'm A-okay with that.
It's
one thing that I'm kind of looking forward to is, so like you mentioned chapter 9 a second ago, and like chapter 9, like even the reworked chapter 1 at this point with the new monsters that have introduced. When chapter 9 was first put into the game, the new monster types, and particularly when they showed up in arena, massacred people. They were pretty overtuned, and crystal elementals one-shot you off screen.
What do you mean they used to? They still do. What do you?
Well, crystal elementals don't spawn in arena anymore.
Well, yeah, but all the other ones still do.
They deal a lot of damage. And then like the new monsters that they added into the game, which are intentionally overtuned, we've been told, for the early game in chapter 1, they spawn in arena as well. So like when we have new monsters, when we have, you know, the chapter 10 content coming our way in about a month from now, or less than a month from now, that's going to show up in your monoliths, and that's going to show up in your arena pushes as well for the new arena races. We're going to die, dude.
I'm a little sad about that because sadly right now you can still do the reroll cheese, where you reroll the mono so that you get like a better mob density layout or whatever. And if the mobs end up being dangerous again like they were, it's probably going to be the meta. And I don't like being on stream and pressing T whenever I see an Act 9 mob. Currently.
You do that?
Well, not like most of the time. It depends, like mainly the objective. Like if I get like a triple diamond matron one, I'm just out of there. I would rather just go eat nails for breakfast.
Is that because they're scary, or is that because they're so fast and they run away from you?
Multiple reasons, specifically that one, but it's just not time efficient. The amount of time it would take me to go and chase them down and kill them is about the same amount of time as if I press T, left the mono, and then re-rolled the mobs.
So right? Maybe is it like the time efficiency of chasing them? Because like the dangerous monsters, I don't mind having dangerous monsters.
Oh, I don't mind them either. It's just like the thing is like if we're getting down to the meta, quote unquote, right? If you let the player skip the content to go faster.
If there's one thing that ARPG gamers hate, it's playing the game.
Sadly, I do. I mean, well, the thing is like what would you rather do, Perry? Would you rather fight 3 diamond matrons, or would you rather go and kill 1 spire? You know, like it's.
I'd rather fight 3 diamond matrons. You're asking the wrong person. I love killing diamond matrons.
It's like.
But also the idea of like leaving a monolith because the other one might have a chance of being less tedious, I'll just put up with it.
Well, it depends. it's specifically I do it when like I'm trying to push corruption, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're pushing corruption, you do that. That is something you do because
I could
like,
see doing that at like, 5, 6, 700 corruption.
oh
Sure.
no, I clicked void enemies deal 300% increased damage. Looks like I get to sit in a loading screen for a bit until I wait till I get like a non-void enemy mono, right? And
That's
it's
so
just
boring.
like
Don't do that to
it is
yourself.
boring. Well, this is the thing though, Perry. Even if I didn't do it
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't do it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? There will be people that do it, and these are the people that we would essentially be competing with,
So
and
you'd
they
be
don't
looking for
care.
monster generation to just like work in a more consistent way instead of totally re-roll all the
Well,
monsters.
yeah, that's like the thing is like if you're gonna give us a tool to abuse, we're going to abuse it.
I
So
hear
we
you.
have,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
sadly, it's kind of like you have to baby proof the house essentially, because like it's just how it is. People are just going to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
if the baby can open the oven, that's the only thing she will do is open the oven. Yes.
Hmm.
First-hand experience. I've learned that all of a sudden. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad, but it's true. It's like you have to think of it like that because like I said, me and you, we might not do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the the people who don't care, they're gonna do that. So you have to always think of that first.
I hear you. So
Yeah.
we're figuring that on May 25th, we're probably getting like chapter 10. We're not getting trade stuff. We're probably getting the ladder back. So we'll probably have like some
Can we
weekend
get
races going on.
residences? I like the meme. Can I make a resonance with you? And I want to do it.
What on earth does that mean?
The resonance. Oh, you know the thing like if you play
Oh,
with someone
I thought you
long
said
enough-
residence. Like you want to buy a house with me or something?
Speaking about resonances, though, I'm really hoping that when they do this, that it takes like maybe a day of play or something like that. Because if they don't do it right, if we get resonances first, we're gonna end up with like a small TFT situation where we have little trading servers. Like, oh yeah, I have this really strong 3LP drill cores.
I think the
trade a
devs are well
resonance with
aware
me,
of that
right?
situation. So I want to
I'm
make sure
hoping- Yeah.
I want to make sure that people know what we're talking about with the resonance thing because like that hasn't
Yeah,
come up
go
in
ahead.
conversation for a
Yeah,
while
go
now.
ahead.
So resonances would be like resonance. It is a like an item / connection that you have with another player. They talked about it in the trade manifesto when they talked about like the new trade factions that are going to be coming out in 1.0. And it seems like the kind of thing that helps you, like, I can trade with Dread even though Dread's currently sleeping, and I normally play with him all the time, and I play with him 8 hours a day, but he's currently sleeping, and I just dropped an item for him. So it helps to bridge the gap for people who want to be able to trade with someone that they oftentimes play with. And I totally agree with you. I think resonances would be an excellent early addition to Last Epoch before the 1.0 patch. Yeah, totally.
It would make me actually want to play with other people because I'll be
Mm-hmm.
honest, like we got this multiplayer patch and all, and it's all fun and dandy, and people have been enjoying it, but I haven't really been like too enthralled with the actual multiplayer gameplay, mainly because like as soon as it came out, they kind of removed a lot of the fun stuff that we were gonna do with it.
What's
Like
that?
specifically the support necro stuff. Like that was
The
gonna
one
be
build
what I
you
was
wanted to
going
play?
do.
Sure.
Well, I mean, we played support werebear, like that's pretty self-explanatory, and then we played support paladin, which is just playing the normal paladin, right? And it feels like as though we kind of been playing multiplayer, but not really, right? It's been kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like, oh yeah, and it's like, yeah, don't get me wrong, it would be fun. It's fun to play with other people, but at the same time, it's like it would be nice to have that option of being able to actually go a step further per se. Because I don't know about you, but I actually enjoy the kind of aura bot plus carry gameplay that like Pee-wee has. I know a lot of other people don't like it, but I prefer that. I'm usually not going to party up with someone else just because I want to party up with someone else, right? It's just
Mhm.
going to be if I'm going to be partying with someone, I want to do it as for a reason.
Not just two dudes killing monsters together, but like your party.
Yeah.
Like you should have
But
roles in the party.
resonances would change that because you'd have to do that. Now my problem is like if I want Mr. Flintler's 3 LP drill cores, and I'm gonna trade him like, I don't know, like a stick, right? I'm gonna have to like play with his very bad shaman build for like 3 days just so I can get the stick, right? I mean, just the drill cores. So I don't know how that's gonna go because it's gonna kind of be a little annoying in that regard. But like I said, as long as they all come out at the same time, like if you get like the trade factions plus the residences, this won't be a problem because you just one trade, right? But if we get the residents early, I could see that becoming a thing for a little bit. It'd be funny. The memes would be glorious.
Making resonance with somebody.
Yes.
Hey man, you resonate with me.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked a little bit about the new information that we got. Like it's a cool trailer. It's got good visuals. I like it, but it doesn't really give us any information. So maybe next week or the week after that, we'll have like
the new mobs look cool. I like the
cool,
mobs.
Good.
Yeah. Because like,
listen, it just means for me like new
design.
visuals.
Like,
it means
I love most of the mob design, like the visual mob design in last Epoch. I love all that.
I agree.
I just don't like how certain ones have insane base stats versus the rest. That's a problem. But like I like seeing diamond matrons. I think their animations are cool. It's just my problem is like when I see 60, like we've talked about this to death at this point, so I'm not going to continue. But
you know what's funny? You actually mentioned something a while ago, and I forgot to make the joke about it. But you're saying like all the best animations, all the best things in Last Epoch are locked behind content that no one ever does,
or no one wants to see. Like when you get like a triple diamond matron mono.
How do you feel about spears right now?
Spears?
Because this is a joke that keeps coming up, and like spears have really good animations.
Oh, yeah. So, all right. So they're slowly fixing them. Okay. They're slowly getting around to this. I can see them attempting to fix the problems that we currently have with like, oh, I have these cool item, like this cool two-handed mace, and I have no reason to use it. Oh, I have this cool exalted spear, and I have no reason to use it. They're slowly fixing that with like, you know, like the Rive node, the double two-handed node, stuff like that. They're slowly getting around to that, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys on that. Like they're slowly fixing that, and I like it. I'm just more surprised that like they added all this extra like weapons expert stuff, but they just don't have the like polearm stuff.
There's no spear stuff, like one-handed maces. Like Doomstars are cool, but like who uses
lunge, one? Lunge requires it. There is one particular reason to use a Doomstar. And it is when you're playing dual wield Warpath Fizz crit, and you want the 50% Fizz pen while wielding a mace. It's just Fizz crit Warpath is in the worst state it's ever been, so you just don't play that build right now. But maybe one day. Well, it's because they locked all the more damage modifiers behind
Fire and Void
conversions. Yeah, they forgot that physical damage exists. But it's
kind of weird, isn't it?
Rive VK came back and made physical damage back on top.
I just want Rive to have Void conversion on it.
Oh yeah, I know, but at the same time, I appreciate the fact that there's a reason to go Fizz.
So let me tell you one of my frustrations right now, which is adjacent to what we're currently talking about, and you tell me how is it with Path of Exile, okay? Because like you've been playing a lot of Path of Exile these days on your vacation. So one of the frustrations that I have in Last Epoch is like reasons to use base types and reasons to use weapon types. So like spears come up in conversation a lot, like one-handed maces, two-handed maces. Like why am I using these items if there's not a good base type? Like if there's no weapon-specific synergy, I look at things like Blade Dancer and like you want a dagger so you can use umbral blades. Maybe you want dual-wield swords so you can have glancing blows. Maybe you look at like a sentinel build and like you're oftentimes using a shield, but you want to use axes and swords so that you get the extra attack speed in the base sentinel skill tree. And those are the kinds of things that make me want to really use a weapon type. Like katanas have crit multi on them. Odachis exist. Like why would I use a trident, which has 10 extra base damage and 10 extra crit multi over an Odachi? but like an Adachi's faster and it has sword synergies all over the place. So that's one of my frustrations in Last Epoch right now. How does that line up with like what you're doing in Path of Exile? Is that a problem that other action RPGs have?
I mean, in PoE specifically, it's not as bad because each specific base type has their own like synergies and reason to use it, but they also have items and base types that are like a lot stronger than the rest and have unique affixes instead of just being a stat stick. So like for instance, normally you would not use a mace in Path of Exile most of the time, but there is a specific base called a boom mace that is a heist specific base, right? Essentially it's implicit, just allows you to trigger it's like a boom or something like that. It's like a skill that you can socket with stuff, and like it's like a shockwave except in the maze, and it's something like that, and that gives you a reason to use it. There have been people that have used it, right? Like for instance in like that static strike shockwave strength stacking thing that Palestrin is playing, he used that thing, and like stuff like that. Like there are reasons to do it, right? There are reasons to use these bases, and there's also strong, unique items to using these bases as well. Like for instance, Judicator is a very strong item, and the fact that it's on a spear is a downside, right? You know, but Judicator is so strong that you just use it.
It reminds me of the items and the base types that were introduced. I think it was introduced in like 083, but I have to go back and take a look at it when.
So they should just be more niche. Like they should just, and like so the way LE is doing it is they're doing it backwards, right? They're making every item generic and then making the differences in the skill trees. Like for instance, you know, a spear and a sword is the same, but you can only use a spear with like surf and strike, or you can you know, if you use a spear while using lunge, right, you get an extra javelin proc, stuff like that. They're doing it the other way around, and I think that's the problem, is when you do it the other way around, instead of making the weapons quote unquote unique and like special, you make the skills special. It makes the weapons lose all of their inherent value, and it becomes a stat stick fest, which it essentially is, right? Like
I look at a spear and I think of like, can I use this for Holy Trail Javelin, or am I going to actually play multi-strike someday? And those are the only builds that come to mind.
why would you play multi-strike with that?
Multi-strike technically can use a spear because a spear has extra melee attack range, and one of the only skills that uses melee attack range is a spear. Or sorry, it's multi-strike.
See, they could lean into that. Like for instance, I equip a spear on like my puncture build, and my puncture actually reaches a far length, right? Now,
Like twice as far.
happen,
That'd be sick.
But it should be like, yeah, it should be significantly farther to the point where you could feel it. And I'm hoping one day they actually look back and do that kind of stuff. But they kind of like I said, they kind of have done it the other way around. Where like, no, we want the skills to be why you use certain base types.
It reminds me of Warpath, the node that says like you get base crit for using a sword, you know, fist penetration for this, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and like I said, it becomes a stat stick fest. How many stats can I get? It's not I want to use a spear because it makes me actually do something different or something like that, right? Yeah. And like for instance, Pee-wee, like we're gonna bring that up again since you brought it up. Usually there's a big discussion on, well, back in the day, I don't know if it's like this anymore, right? But like there was a big thing between axes and swords. Swords were crit and accuracy based. They required a lot of investment. Axes, they had a lot of flat damage to make up for the fact that they didn't have that crit and all that. And it really synergized really well with a resolute technique on the left side of the tree, right? Because all of their nodes weren't crit based. So in the early game, you'd go axes, and then you'd swap to swords when you felt like you could invest into crit. We don't really have that kind of nuance in Ellie right now. We just have I put on sword, I get base crit kind of thing, or I put on spear, or yada yada yada. And that's like, now with the way they could fix this is by making more interesting, unique items, since because Ellie has
Are you saying unique items? Or are you saying more interesting base types?
Oh no, just unique items. Because
Gotcha.
like the thing is like those are bases.
Because of LP, sure.
Because of LP, right? Like for instance, like imagine if a bludgeon had like, I don't know, like 40% more area on it. Wouldn't that make it a lot more usable and a lot more
way more interesting? Yeah.
Yeah, like and now I'd actually want to use a mace in my build, stuff like that, right? But it just has these rinky-dink modifiers. It's like, oh yeah, I could just get that everywhere else. I don't need it. Stuff like that. That's why we use these items, because I like freedom of choice where each weapon has its own buffs, but the problem is there is no freedom of choice. You never use a spear. You never use a mace.
So one of the things that I wanted to mention a second ago, I think it was like 083, 084. They introduced like a whole bunch of new base types for various weapons, and one of them was a one-handed mace, and it was I think it's like a rune hammer is the name of it.
Oh yeah,
and it's got
lightning skill.
+1 in lightning skills. Like when they tease that, it's like, damn, like this is plus levels on the plus set of a maze. That's awesome.
But then you forget you're playing.
No one's ever used it.
Well, so the thing is like you think of that, right? You look at that mace, like, oh my god, holy crap,
that's a big deal.
That's insane. And then wait, no, we're playing Ellie. We're not playing PoE. That sucks.
+1 is not inherently strong because it depends on having additional modifiers you can pick up. Like having a mace, like the opportunity cost is using a katana, or so using something that has higher base damage or crit multi or synergy with your particular skill. And like you could use it for a throwing attack, but then you're not using something with base crit on it. You could use it for an ailment, but like an ailment lightning plus levels, you're getting pretty niche. And then again, you're using a mace, which just like doesn't have good synergies as opposed to something like an axe or sword.
Also, so one of the problems as well is it's just a numbers game versus quality of life. So like for instance, when it comes to like maces and swords and stuff, they essentially have the same balance when it comes to stats, right? So for instance, maces have more flat damage at the same percentage that swords have more attack speed. They do the same amount of DPS, they just have different numbers, but the problem is we're playing a very slow game in comparison to other ARPGs. That means that every single advantage you can get in terms of action speed specifically is highly sought after. Why do you think everyone uses swords and daggers and all those stuff, right? And why we use two-handed swords versus stuff like that, right? It's because you don't want to feel sluggish, right? At all. Like you don't want to feel sluggish, like at all. So having higher base attack rate, but being, dealing just a little bit less damage isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. It's like I'd rather just be able to actually make my character do things I want it instead of having it be locked in animations all day. Multi-strike, I actually.
You're the guy out here playing Leviathan Carver Smelter's Wrath. Come on, I see you.
Yeah, but there's a difference though. You're completely ignoring the base attack speed.
Oh, okay, my mistake.
Yeah, that's the whole point of that is you ignore the base attack speed. But yeah,
Leviathan Carver Tempest Strike incoming. Ooh, can't wait.
See, I like the Leviathan Carver because it's unique. That's a good way of making a weapon where you.
I wish it were a stronger weapon. I wish it had a home. Yeah.
No, it is a strong weapon, Perry.
It's so slow.
If you want to do Fizz Crit Rive, it is one of the biggest, hardest hitting weapons you could possibly put when you get LP on it. Like versus all the other LP bases, it is the biggest, fattest stick. because you get the double increased damage and the flat. Yes, but you don't have to go fast if you one shot the enemy, right? It's like if you one shot the diamond matron from 100 to 0, do you really have to be a little bit faster? You get so much attack speed on Sentinel. It's not a big deal. But yeah, it's like, but that's actually interesting. Like what they did with the Leviathan Carver is interesting because like it just actually has something going for it. Sure, it's slow, but that's the whole point, is to ignore that and abuse it. And that's the fun of ARPGs, is finding stuff like that, right? Like for instance, when I played a physical damage over time shockwave earthquake and I was using Leviathan Carver on it, I felt so smart. Because I said, oh yeah, the aftershocks, like they don't care about the attack speed, and I'm attacking slow with Earthquake anyways, right? I'm getting all this extra flat damage for free. Cool, and I don't have to worry about the base crit because I'm doing dot damage. It's great. It's like that felt cool. Like that's what I want in my ARPG, is variety and make me feel like as though I'm smart for doing things. But then when you look at something like Bludgeon, it's just like, oh.
What's this brigade against bludgeon that you have all of a sudden?
Well, I just
got stats
like
on it. It's fine.
I feel like it's a missed opportunity because that's like the thing with like LE, is I have a much higher standard for uniques for them because of the fact that we have the LP system. I would prefer that, like, that would, because that's one of the most interesting things about Ellie is the uniques and stuff, is because you can do whatever you want with them. So if they're interesting, like for instance, I don't want items to just be stat sticks. I want them to be interesting, right? Like for instance, this Trident of the Last Abyss, right? Specifically, I'm looking at it right now, right? It has a bunch of stats.
Is that the void one? Okay,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, like this one. This one's interesting. Like the 100% chance to cast Abyssal Echoes on melee kill. What people like, you got to think of it like, I'm not slapping flat onto this. I'm taking the stats I want, like the melee attack speed, melee flat, and all that, or whatever, and I'm slapping this base on top of it, right? I'm slapping these new modifiers, right? Like, oh, do I want Abyssal Echoes on kill? That'd be great. Although they could lower the cooldown maybe a little bit, but you know, that would be great. Or maybe make it so that on boss hit you could get it too, and then actually that spear would be amazing. By the way, boss or rare hit, please. But yeah, like that's like the thing, is like when the item is interesting and actually have stats on it that aren't capable of getting it anywhere else, right? That actually makes the system function properly.
So what's a unique item in Last Epoch that you do like then?
Oh, that I think
like something that you want to include in builds, or something that really stands out to you?
Oh, just in general?
Sure.
Oh, I'm just scrolling down the list.
Yeah, as you scroll, I'll talk. So like we've been doing these build contests recently. We did something with Rot Mind, which is like kind of generic. It's got like poison spell damage for damage over time spells. And then it's also got like +1 on it. So like you can use that with LP. We did a contest with Firestarter's Torch as soon as it got bug fixed. So like getting more damage was kind of interesting because it has, you know, low spell damage values on it. It's got low melee damage values on it. So a lot of people ended up going Ignite, and like that was a cool workaround. And it's fun to try to figure out how to take advantage of this thing, especially with like the constraints of, you know, can you really get something with 2 or 3 LP on it? Like most people did, but then you also need to, you know, land the right modifiers on it. But sure, go ahead. What do you got?
I figured it out. Ghostmaker, I think, is probably one of the best designed uniques they've ever made in the history of Last Epoch.
I totally disagree, but you tell me why.
What do you mean disagree?
I don't like it.
Okay, all right. Let me explain.
You tell me why, and then I'll tell you why.
So the Ghostmaker, if you don't know, chat, it is a unique rune dagger that has a bunch of flat necrotic damage over time for spells, flat, right? It has chance to cast summon wraith when you or your wraiths kill an enemy. So either you kill stuff and you summon wraiths, or your wraiths kill stuff to recycle your wraiths. Then chance to cast Infernal Shade when you or your wraiths kill an enemy, right? So when you kill something with Infernal Shade, you'll recast Infernal Shade, or when your wraith kills something, it'll cast Infernal Shade, right? So recycle itself. And then of course, the more Infernal Shade damage per active wraith against bosses and rare enemies, and then the increased area of Infernal Shade and then of course of your summon melee wraiths attack, which is very important for a melee build because area is really good for melee minion builds because it makes them feel like less poo. It's great. Now, the reason I like this dagger so much specifically is because when I look at that, there are like instantly two ideas I have. And then there are plenty of more things. Like for instance, I was thinking about putting it on a necrotic dot lich and then specking Infernal Shade off my bar so that whenever I kill stuff with like my wandering spirits or whatever, right? I propagate extra Infernal Shades to kill trash, right? Because that's the point of it, right? And you also get ward on kill too, which is really cool, especially as a necromancer. And the reason I like the unique so much is there's so many different things that makes me think of and makes me want to try and do. Like there's so many things I still want to do with this dagger, and I think it's like one of the best designed items I've seen. Now, obviously, should Infernal Shade get a 400% more damage modifier to make it actually viable on bosses and stuff? No. Its base damage should be buffed, and then it shouldn't need that much more damage, right? Obviously, that's ridiculous. There's an insane amount of more damage to add on to it to make it work, right? But Necro can't do well. We don't care about that. You only need one. Why would you need two?
Here's my counter question then. Can you use this thing without specking into Wraiths or Infernal Shade?
Yes, because it's a fat chonker of a freaking weapon.
So it's got damage over time. It's got necrotic damage for damage over time spells.
You have two choices now.
Tell me about this, because this part of the question is much more interesting to me.
When you're playing a necrotic damage over time lich, this is a better option sometimes than Marinas, because as a lich, you have plenty of percentage increased damage, which is what you're mainly getting out of Marinas, right? But the Ghostmaker has 20 more flat than a Marinas does. 26 more flat, because Marinas, it has 80, right? This is 60 plus 20 or whatever. I think. Let me go look again just to make sure so I'm not spouting nonsense here. But yeah, Marinas Lost Soul, it gives you 25 on top of 66. So it's like, I think it's like 90. And then you get the increased spell damage and the increased cast speed.
So you get cast speed, spell damage.
You ignore the rest of it, and it has the downside of the reduced health, right? Now, Ghostmaker doesn't have that downside, and it has more flat on it, which is important because flat is what's going to stop you. It's not going to be increased damage on a lich, right? Let's be real. And on a necrotic dot lich, I would probably rather do that. Also, as well, Ghostmaker, I don't know if you've checked at all, but it's going to be easier to get an LP Ghostmaker than an LP Marinas. It's going to be a little bit easier, just in general.
Okay.
But yeah, so if you're playing Crit Lich, you use Marinas, and you're playing Dot Lich, you use Ghostmaker. And like I said, it gives you that option of being able to spec into Infernal Shade for even more clear, because I'm pretty sure Infernal Shade doesn't have to be on your bar for that.
Okay.
But yeah, Ghostmaker is a sick item. Like they did a good job.
So the reason that I don't like it just mentions skill names too often. Well, I don't like that it says Infernal Shade, Wraith. It
does it in an interesting way that makes you not only, because I get what you mean, because you look at a different item, right? Like Jelkor's blasting knife, right?
I hate Jelkor's blasting knife.
But unlike Jelkor's, there's only one build when I think of Jelkor's, right? But I think of 3 to 4 builds with Ghostmaker.
Okay.
Because you have Infernal Shade Necromancer, which is a build, and it works. It's actually pretty good. You just play Necromancer use Dread Shade as a curse to deal more damage, yada yada yada, and you summon Wraiths to just give yourself more damage on single target, right? And you just play an Infernal Shade build, and it is competitive with Lich in terms of clear and all that.
Okay.
Obviously not taking this because you don't get an extra life for no reason, right? And then you have melee Wraiths, because as your melee Wraiths go around, they will put Infernal Shades on themselves, which automates some of the process of playing the offhand, which is Scorn, right? So you get all the benefits, and you don't have to like spam Infernal Shade while clearing because they do it for you, right? So that's cool. That's great and dandy. It's like a lot of free damage and all that. That's its own build. Or if you wanted to, for some reason, I don't know why you would, but you could play it on ranged Wraiths as well. But I don't think you do that. But and then when I think of Necrotic Dot Lich, right, I get like an LP one of these fuckers, right? I would use it on that. I would use it on Necrotic Dot Lich because I could spec in Infernal Shade and improve my clear. Because then what that means is, because Infernal Shade has insane clear, let's be real, but the single target's terrible. But you can just play single target Wandering Spirits and then go around and tap the Wandering Spirits button, and as it kills stuff, it will propagate Infernal Shades, which just kill the rest, right? Because if you don't know, one of the best things about the item is, you know how like Infernal Shade is fire damage, and that doesn't mesh well with necrotic damage and all
Because
that.
it puts, okay, there you go. And see, that's
But
interesting.
flat necrotic.
It makes it necrotic. Okay, okay.
Which is, and you get 20 at the top of Lich, and that's enough to clear, right? And all of that combined, like, just lets you. There's so many things you can do with it. Like the fact that you can proc Infernal Shades on kill. I think we need more stuff like this, because it's not like I need to do more big dick DPS. It's like I need to improve my clear. Oh, look, a Ghostmaker is like Ghostmaker is an interesting option versus like Marinas. The fact that it even makes me think about it versus Marinas is insane, because Marinas
is insane.
Is an insane item,
right?
Right.
So I was playing this this Rive character recently, and I tried doing physical damage, or sorry, I tried doing void damage with an Apathy's Maw, switched over to Fizz, because then you get to take advantage of the Fizz penetration node in Rive, and it got me wanting the Rive conversion to exist, because it doesn't currently exist in Rive. It's got like, it's got a point, it's got a place where it should be there, but like it just like isn't there. And they said that, yes. So exactly like you've said, EHG says like we intend to have a unique item at some point where it'll introduce a void tag onto Rive. Man, I just really hope it's not a weapon. Like, I don't know.
On a good weapon? Yeah.
I hope it's not a weapon. I hope it's like gloves or boots or a relic or a helmet or something. Just like,
no, it's so gonna be a weapon.
It's totally gonna be a weapon, and I'm already disappointed about it. It's like, well, let me gear my own character. Cool, like, don't make all your decisions for me.
It'd be cool if it was like a one-handed weapon or something like that.
And not two-hander, so I can't do the cool two-handed node.
Yeah, but then they would be two different builds, right? Instead of getting the double damage, you get all the echo stuff for free and all that.
So there's some
vitality stacking.
True, I've got a build for it. Don't worry.
I wish you could put extra points in that node. That node would actually be good if you could do that.
Me too. I think it's a cool node. I think using a Shadow Cleaver one-handed axe is pretty cool with that.
That's like one of the reasons that I really like. You know how like we always say we don't like point dumps. Remember that.
You just want extra points for like the things.
I'm regretting it. I'm regretting saying that, because now they're doing the opposite, where they're not giving us enough points to dump in. Like, for instance, this node, if you don't know, on weapon specialists inside Rive, it has +1 physical damage per dexterity, +1 void per vitality with an axe, and then +1 fire damage per attunement with a mace. You can't really build around that, because +1 flat per one attribute is not enough to make it worth doing, right? Especially since you can't convert Rive, right? You know, like you're saying.
Brutal.
But if you could put 3 points in there, you can get like 3 void damage per vitality. You get like 100 vitality. That's your entire build. You don't need other.
That might be a lot, but I hear you. I hear you.
Well, okay, it could be like 2 or whatever.
Sure.
But that's a lot of investment to get to 100 vitality. Let's be fair.
And what you're describing right here is it's not inherently strong. It's a node that you spec into that allows you to build your character in a new way. And like, I don't know about actually putting 2 points there. Like 2 points might be OP.
you know how we were saying those plus level implicits are bad?
Yes.
Well,
Yep.
they wouldn't be as bad if we had. I know it's crazy because we've been complaining and complaining and complaining.
There's a design philosophy that I need to mention here in a
Yeah.
second, but keep going.
We've been complaining about freaking point dumps and stuff. But like point dumps are only point dumps if they're in nodes that suck. They're not point dumps if they're nodes that are interesting. You know, like I wouldn't mind putting 2 extra points into this node. Like,
So there's a design philosophy that EHG has. They want you to feel as though, you know, if only I could get 1 more point in this skill. Like they want you to feel like 25 points in a skill and 6 skills spec'd into. They want you to feel like that's what you want. So you can only have 5 of the 6 that you want, and you can only have 20 of the 25 points you want. So the skills that don't feel like that are mistakes, right? Like things like Spriggan Form. You get like 3 skills and then Ice Thorns, and then you don't really have a 5th skill because you don't really have things to access as a Spriggan
I think
Form.
Rive passes that because you want everything.
Oh, for sure. Rive's got a good skill tree. But like there's plenty of skill trees that don't pass that litmus test. So when you're thinking about, you know,
Surf and Strike.
like I don't have a good 5th skill that I want to use, or I've got 19 points in my skill tree and the 20th point doesn't really matter. Those are probably just design mistakes. Like maybe, you know, maybe that's the person missing something or not considering it.
The
But
thing is, like, let's be real. A lot of this is old, like we've said before.
yeah, like, you know, Volcanic Orb, but just old at this point.
Well, another thing that would help is like if we had those point dump nodes, instead of it just being a point dump, you could also add those thresholds as well. Like if you put enough points in this, you get this.
More
yada,
thresholds,
yada,
please. Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you feel about like a node that's 1 out of 1, but you can just like put a 2nd point in it if you jump through some hoops?
That would be interesting. Or that would be like, so it could be an affix where, you know how like we have anoints in Path of Exile? It'd be like an anoint where it would literally say like, Void, let's be real, right?
Adds plus 1 point. Yeah.
Plus 1 point of weapon specialist, and you'll have to remember all the names. But that would be cool. Like then it's like it overrides the limit, and obviously they'd only add the ones that actually make
And you know
sense.
what? And someday, you know, 5 or 6 years from now, that could be a league mechanic. Absolutely, it could exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, that sounds so good, doesn't it? Woo, I want to play that league.
Oh boy.
I would do it.
Hire me.
All right, so we are approaching 1 hour for our conversation here on the podcast. I want to sneak in one more topic of conversation because I think it's gonna be a short one, but I want to ask anyways. So I've been playing some hardcore recently, and you know I died a couple times getting back in the swing of hardcore. And while I was dying, I was also spending some time reading dialogue and catching up on all the lore of Last Epoch, knowing what the hell is actually going on. I want to ask you, what is your theory about who the Immortal Emperor is?
Who it is?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's obviously Gregory the Groll. He's kind of angry after
No,
he got
come on.
kicked out, right? It's a joke. Come on. I'm allowed to have a joke.
I would love to see more Gregory the Groll in the future. So, yeah, go ahead.
I think it's shoot. You got to give me a second because it's been a while since
I'll give you 2 names that might be on your mind. Some people think it's Grail. Grail is
it's not Grail.
Grail's like the buddy with Zarek and General Hardon. And then the other option would be Morditis. Morditis is the guy you pulled the spear out of.
Yeah.
And he's like the son of Heorot and he hates humanity or something. You think it's Morditis? Your team Morditis?
I don't know yet. I gotta remember. I know that there's someone interesting I thought of.
Someone in chat thinks it's you. There is a theory that it's like you from a different timeline. I do not think that's the case. But it's kind of interesting, like going through the storyline, trying to figure out what's going on. Like there seems to be this opinion that Grail is like some kind of himbo and he's not smart enough to actually become the Immortal Emperor of something. But my theory currently is that Grail is the Immortal Emperor. His armor set definitely matches the armor set that the Immortal Emperor has. It's got the same kind of aesthetic going on. And, you know, he's got the buddy-buddy relationship with all 3 of the other characters, with Julia, with Yulia, Zarek and Harton. And it feels like you go back in time and you talk to Grail and you're like, Grail, watch out. This really bad thing is about to happen. And this guy is going to take over the world and he's going to do it by doing this. And he's going to do, and like he's sitting there and Grail's like, oh, is that true? How is he going to do it? Oh, okay. Gotcha. Like he's taking notes. You tell him how to do it. And then he goes and takes over. I think it's him.
Yeah. I can't remember who I thought it was going to be. It's like I'm trying to remember.
Well, playing through the campaign a couple more times recently, I like the I like the introduction of Yulia. I like, you know, how she. I feel like I'm only right now learning the lore after like 4,000 hours of playing this game. But Yulia's like, oh shit, we talked about this, you know, 1,000 years ago. Weren't you taking notes? Didn't you remember that? And it's like, what? No. And you go back in time, you talk to her the first time. And like, I really like the time travel storyline of this game. And I'm kind of surprised by that because time travel is a hard thing to pull off.
Yeah. I don't know. After the multiplayer launch and all that, after Ulrich, yeah. I don't remember anything after him because he was just that impactful.
He's made people feel dehydrated, thirsty, you might say. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, but like anyway, so like we have this new storyline stuff coming out. Presumably, we're getting chapter 10.
I like the alternate timeline stuff more. I find those more interesting.
Well, that's what the whole monolith system is, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. I like the alternate timeline system where you fuck things up and it's butterfly effect and all that, you know? I like the fact that there's a timeline where a bunch of grody shamans realize that they can like combine necrotic stuff with fire stuff and like whirl over the world. And then you have a different timeline where they're doing the same thing, but it's like the Soulfire Bastion or whatever. And then you have the timeline where like Rai's general decides fuck you, Rai, and does it instead.
And then you have the timeline where Hayrod defeats Rai, but also kind of like goes crazy and starts defeating everyone else as well. Yeah, it's cool stuff. Yeah. I like it.
And then you have the Void Hearten. That one's funny.
What, Chet? I know somebody watching here live is going to tell me, what's the game that all the lore of Last Epoch is based on? It's like Chrono Trigger or something. Is it Chrono Trigger? I've been told that I should actually play Chrono Trigger someday. It's like the best storyline that Perry's never played before. So maybe
you can do that while everyone else is off playing Diablo 4.
Maybe I'll do some variety content and actually play Chrono Trigger so I can compare and contrast the lore. That could be a fun thing to do.
That'd be some great some stuff for you to do because you're gonna be heckin' bored.
I don't know. Like, man, we're still gonna have the races going on, presumably, but I guess we'll find out exactly what the timeline's gonna look like for 091 and like the new ladder.
Like I said, if like my thing with it is if they placed it a week before Diablo 4, right?
Hmm.
That might mean that it won't, like they already stated that this is going to be a smaller patch, obviously, right, in scope and all that. But how much smaller are we talking here? You know what I mean? Like,
do you think we're getting unique items? What do you think?
Oh yeah, I like the usual retinue of stuff, but we're like we've been waiting for end game stuff and stuff like that. It's like we're probably not going to get that, and since we're not going to get trade either, it's like going to be essentially like a non-update per se, kind of like how like when they added the 2 extra dungeons last year, and then we went, like the thing is like the whole reason why the year like away felt so bad was it wasn't just a year, it felt like a year and a half because
the previous updates,
because the dungeon patch was kind of mid per se, mainly just because the dungeons in general, we've talked to death about those, so I won't go into more detail here. But essentially, I really don't like how the dungeons are currently, right?
I hear you. And you know what? I feel like we talked about that a couple times, so I'm going to trim the conversation right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But The next time we get an update for the dungeons, as soon as something changes with the dungeons, we will have an entire dungeon podcast episode once again.
Well, in theory, I'm hoping if there's anything crazy like that's like if they do a whole expose like tomorrow, we're obviously going to do another episode, right?
Oh, tomorrow, sure. As soon as we get the emergency update, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the things that I want to do in the future is like, we had a lot of fun in the past doing a tier list episode of the podcast. So I guess whether you're watching this live or on YouTube, or maybe judge us right now, start thinking about what kinds of stuff you might do in a tier list. We'll see if we can put together one of those episodes of the future of this this podcast here as well. So I think that about does it. Dret, thank you for sharing an hour with me. I know you're a busy guy, but I appreciate having your time here. And whether you're watching on YouTube, Spotify, or even live here in Twitch chat right now, I appreciate you hanging out, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night.
He's lying, chat. He doesn't actually appreciate you guys.
Come on now.